currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning around. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is October 17th, 2013. Tonight, I am super excited. I have a special guest for you all, an old friend and a veteran activist. And he's willing to give up 2 hours of his night tonight to go over a slew of different topics. He's just an incredible guy. He really is. He's an average, everyday, real individual. He doesn't do this for money or anything like that. He was one of the original founding members of the original We Are Change New York back in the day. Just a hell of a street activist. I mean, he's gone out there in the past giving out DVDs, waking people up, giving out information, doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, he's been at this since I would say at least the same amount of time that I've been doing this, because we all, Federal Jack, We Are Change, everything like that, Luke creating We Are Change New York, all of that, and Danny and all the other guys that helped found it, all of that came around about the same time. So we all kind of entered this arena, this ring as it is, the steel cage of truth around the same time. So I've known Danny a long time, and he's really a hell of a guy. Anyway, he's also graduated into being the co-host of a radio show, which you all know I've had on the radio broadcast before, Danny Panzella. And Danny's a good friend of mine, and he does a radio show on Blog Talk called Ragamuffin Radio. And Danny Roldan, my guest tonight, is my good friend, happens to be his new co-host. Like they've been going at it as a co-host host scenario for I guess a few months now. And I've noticed that the comments on the Facebook posts and stuff like that, everybody likes the debate back and forth between the two of them. And they have a good flow with each other. I mean, they're good friends anyway, but they have a good flow. They really make a great team. You got to go check out the radio show. It's on Blog Talk. I'm going to have Danny plug everything in a second. I'm going to bring him up. I'm going to have him plug all his stuff first, where you can listen to the radio show, Twitter, Facebook, any YouTube, anything that they have, and then I'm going to get into it with him. But he's just an all-around great guy, and I can't say enough good things about him. So let me bring him on, my good friend, Danny Roldan. Danny, welcome to the broadcast, brother.
Hey, Popeye, thanks for having me, man. It's been a while since I've been on your show.
Yeah, man. I'm always getting a chance to talk to you, off air and pick your brain via Facebook and stuff. But, the past couple weeks we've been going back and forth. Oh, I got to get you on. I got to get you on. There's so much stuff I want to pick your brain about. First thing right off the bat, before I forget, I want you to take a few, however long it takes, a few minutes, whatever. Shameless plugs. Plug whatever you're involved in, including the radio broadcast. And where my listeners can tune into it, because I want them to listen to, your debates with Danny Panzella, because I think they're pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's how it really started. It started out as me as a call-in guest, like I'm calling in your show now. We kind of debated anarchism and its principles on anarchy, and we're kind of similar, but not really. So there was a lot of key points where we debated back and forth, and it made for good radio, and people listened and tuned in, and it just manifested into like a full-time thing now where, we co-host. It's the Ragamuffin Radio Show. You can look it up on Facebook, go to Blog Talk Radio, Ragamuffin Radio. It's on every Sunday night from 7:30 to 9. And right now we're just, our goal, my personal goal with the show since I've come on is not just a debate though, but I've been actually using it to try to get a local following here in the Tampa Bay area where I live now. And I've had guests come on from Tampa to basically like you're having me plug right now. From 7:30 to 7:45, almost every week, I'm having local activists just promote their stuff. And if they can't come on and promote it, I've been promoting it for them. I have a good friend, Timothy Crosby, down here. He started a group called Stand Up for Florida. And right now, they're out doing an event right now, Popeye, and they're live streaming it over Ustream. If you go to Ustream and you go to Stand Up Florida, they have their own channel, and they're actually live filming a DUI checkpoint in Stephanie, Florida, not too far away from the city of Tampa. So he's out there with Tampa Cop Watch and a couple of activists there. They're at a DUI checkpoint, handing out leaflets, handing out flyers about the Fourth Amendment and stuff like that. So I always give activists, local activists here in Tampa, a chance to promote their stuff, because me personally, I've been trying to get back into it. I just went to the March Against Monsanto march here on a Saturday, and it was really big, man. I mean, the one thing that I could say down here that's really big, activist-wise, is Monsanto, anti-GMO, just, food democracy and taking back control of what we eat.
Well, I mean, dude, all these things are so important. The food itself, the food issue is a big thing. There's so many people that have no idea. I get in this argument with them all the time. GMOs aren't bad. GMOs are good. I facepalm it. And I'm like, man, I don't know how to tell you how many different ways GMOs are bad. Like, okay, aside from all the crap that all the chemicals that are sprayed on the fields and everything else. Okay, let's get rid of all that. Let's put that aside. How about the fact that the scientists know that the genes at a basic level are unstable and that they mutate constantly? That can't be good if you're putting it in your body, because then you're eating that, and that's mutating at a cellular level. What do you think you eat food for? Because you process all the nutrients at a cellular level. That can't be good for you. You know what I mean?
Well, if you think about it, there's two ways to think about it. I've spoken to activists that are completely against GMOs, that are completely against the food science and stuff like that. I'm completely against Monsanto. I feel that company is nefarious. Like they're basically out to they want to patent human genes. They're as predatory as a corporation can be. So for me to stop Monsanto and do whatever we can to be something in the gears to stop them, to me that's very important. But then there's the other side of people I speak to that are more scientific and a little nerdy, and their whole argument is, well, the concept of GMOs and the science isn't what's bad. It's the fact that they're pushing this GMO on us when it's not perfected, when it's not safe yet. I just read an article a few months ago how they made a hamburger strictly in a lab using stem cells, and they just reproduced the muscle fibers and created an actual hamburger of 100% lean meat in a lab without even getting it from a cow. And I read that, it was safe. It tasted a little, it actually tasted good in comparison to other burgers and stuff like that. And you have people that look on it as this side. If it's safe and it doesn't harm you, that can only be a positive thing, because you're not harming any animals to get it. You know, the only problem is it's very expensive. So, let me ask you this. If there was down the road, 50, 60, 80 years from now, where genetically modified food and GMOs were completely safe, there's no danger to the environment, they perfected it in a way where it has no negative effects on the human body or the environment, would you still be opposed to it just because it's not natural?
Well, I mean, if there's 100% guarantee there could be no negative side effects, but the problem is,
right.
I mean, that's like living in some sort of fantasy utopia. I mean, that'd be cool, right? If we could, that would be the ultimate goal would be to have perfectly nutritious food and healthy food and safe food, and not have to torture animals or be cruel to some other species of life form to do so. That is like the perfect goal, right? The only problem is we have Dr. Frankenstein is the one that's working at Monsanto on the project. I don't trust them. You know what I mean? That's the problem, Danny.
And you just said it right there. It comes down to trust. Me personally, I don't trust them. What I do is I separate it. I separate the government and Monsanto and the people behind it from the science. I take a look at the science, and I read about the science, and theoretically, genetically modifying organisms should work safely if it's perfected on a theoretical level. I don't think we've reached that point yet where it's perfected. I mean, it's just like any other science where, I'm pretty sure brain surgery and heart surgery, when it just came on the scene, was a lot more high risk than it is now. Flying in airplanes, when an airplane was invented, was probably a lot more high risk than it is now that technology has kind of perfected those. But at the same time, I just don't trust the predators that are pushing the science on us. Not that the science that I don't trust, because I think just like anything, I think human beings are capable of mastering something. I think that, things like space travel, we may be 50 years or 100 years away from perfecting space travel and traveling to another solar system. That doesn't mean, because we're not there yet, doesn't mean that we should just scrap the whole idea and call it a fantasy. I kind of hold the same belief with things like GMOs and stuff like that. I'm willing to give the science a chance, but I just don't want it in the hands of corporations, because corporations are only going to exist to profit. They're going to take the science and they're going to push it when it's dangerous because they want to make money. And there's people even above that not only do they want to make money, but they want to use it as some sort of population control. They want to keep people sick so they continue to spend money in the medical field. They basically want to use us as crops to continue to drain resources from us and cull the population. We all know about the things that are written on the Georgia Guidestones and stuff like that, and we've heard them straight out of people like Bill Gates' mouth, where they want to cut world population down. Ted Turner, the same thing, So we know that the people behind the science are pushing it in a way where I just can't trust the people that are advocating for it. That's where I stand on it.
Exactly. If I knew that they were on a different footing, if I knew that where they were coming from to begin with, the basis of their research into this was for a good reason, then maybe I could trust them. But I know that they're evil and they're nefarious and that they're up to no good. So it's like, okay, I can't trust you. Maybe I'd like to, but no, I can't. And I can't trust their frankincense.
If you think about it like this, they're fighting people pushing for legislation to put labels on GMO foods. Like, why would you fight that? Why if you care more about people's safety than profit, why would you fight people's desire to put a label on it? Because they're scared that if they put a label on it and say, hey, this food's genetically modified, most people won't buy it and it would hurt profit. And that's the reason why I don't support GMOs at this time, because they're using the science for profit. Put a label on it. Let people know, hey, this corn is genetically modified. You have an option to get organic, homegrown, locally grown corn if you so choose to buy it, but they're fighting that. And the fact that they're spending their money and their resources to try to conceal the fact that they're genetically modifying foods, and we don't have a right to know which food on our plate has been genetically modified, to me, that's highly suspicious. So people, sometimes I talk to people, Popeye, about this, and they look at me like, hey, I'm some like New World Order character, and I support GMOs. And it's like, I tell people, look, you're not listening. It's like, it's not that I support GMOs. I don't support these companies that are pushing it. I'm just saying that, the idea of having food grown in a lab where it can conquer world hunger, or we can grow food in the lab and not have to kill animals, or because think about it like this. If you watch a show like Food Inc., take a look at how the cows, the chickens, take a look at how they're treated, before it even gets to your plate. I would much rather have a burger that's grown safely in a lab than getting a burger that's not from an organic grass-fed cow, just something out of the supermarket where they're standing in a trough being fed corn all the time that you have to cook at a certain temperature to kill parasites.
I agree.
At least a burger.
I agree. I know. See, I know exactly where you're going with this, and I know what you mean because I say all the time on air. I can understand the concept of we're going to have a new world order. There's going to be a shift. Okay, things change. It's going to be new compared to the way things used to be. The question is, do we have to have a dark, tyrannical new world order, or can it be a new world order of enlightenment and logic? And love towards one another. And we have that choice. I think that's the choice that Cooper was talking about. Where he said pretty soon we're going to come to a fork in the road. You got to make a left or a right, and that's the choice. And I totally get it because I say all the time I'm down with everybody on Earth getting along together. And people are like, oh, so you're for one world government? Like I don't know what you want to call it. I'm for everybody not killing each other over whose imaginary friend is cooler or who's got the better piece of sand. I mean, it's stupid. Right. We waste so much money and life. We could be exploring the ocean and the stars and everything else. But I understand that we can't get to that until we have an evolution of how we think. You know what I'm saying? Because right now we're still at this base level where we want to conquer each other and kill each other. We have to get beyond that.
Well, and, maybe we might have to face the fact that as human beings, maybe this is our peak. Maybe this is all we're really capable of. I mean, take a look at it like this. I mean, you could, for thousands of years, we've had cats roaming around, house cats and stuff. And for thousands of years, cats' behaviors haven't changed. I mean, they still, display the same evolutionary and biological and instinctual traits. They'll chase a mouse. They have their specific behaviors when they behave in packs and the way they hunt. And take a look at human beings. I mean, we're biological creatures just like them. We have a much larger cerebral cortex, so we can think rationally and have a much higher IQ. But at the same time, we're still creatures. I mean, maybe we got to look at ourselves and say, hey, we've reached our intellectual peak, and the physiology of a human being hasn't changed, and from 8,000 years to now, even before that. The human brain has the same capabilities it did, from the Sumerian era during the first civilization known to man to now. We still have the same level of intelligence, same cognitive capabilities, and we still and one thing hasn't changed: we still kill each other. So I think I'm kind of agreeing with you. Maybe we need to take a step up on an evolutionary level. It might have to be a biological level where all of a sudden our brains evolve physiologically, and we're just using a higher percentage of our brain. Some parts of our brain that aren't being used right now. Maybe it's a physical thing. Maybe it's a philosophical thing. It's just a lot to think about, man.
I think it's a cross between all of it. I think it's a physiological and a spiritual thing. And until we have that evolution, and you make a really good point. It's been going on for so long. I think that's been done on purpose. I mean, from my research over the years, looking back on things, you can see how the powers that shouldn't be have retarded the general masses. There are certain people that have access to information that I guess, in their eyes puts them above the rest. But if everybody had access to the information that the secret societies and everybody does, if everybody had access to all the knowledge there is about our history and going back, whatever it may be, it doesn't matter if it pisses off a certain religion or certain people that don't like religion to be at all or whoever. It doesn't matter what emotional tie anybody's got to anything. I think if we all had access to that information, we would be much further along in our spiritual and our spiritual evolution and our physiological evolution of our brains. You know what I mean? But I definitely think that we've been held back. We've been retarded on purpose. And a lot of people get, retarded. Are you making fun of retarded people? No, retarded means slowed down. Right?
Slow down.
When a mechanic retards an engine, he slows down the timing. He takes it off, whatever it's at that current, at that current position in that moment in time. So that's what they're doing to us. They're retarding our timing, our brains down. I think we're supposed to be, honestly, far beyond where we are, dude. I think it's almost like they've put us in remedial English. You know what I mean?
Well, you think about, what's a perfect analogy for that? I'm sitting, I'm talking and I'm sitting in my car because, I got a 15-month-old and he's sleeping and I talk loud. So my girl doesn't allow me to, when I do the radio show, if I'm not hosting, I'm doing it from my car. So now I'm doing it in here too. And it's funny, the perfect analogy from what you're talking about is a car. Think of it like this. For 100 years, we've had cars, maybe a little bit more than that, right? And now you take a look at these new luxury cars, and they have all these features. Like the goddamn cars park themselves. They have rear view cameras. I mean, they got technology where it can see if you're drifting off the road and steer you back. The cars stop themselves. They have all these computers and gadgets and CPUs in these cars. You can log on to Wi-Fi with it. You can talk to it, and it talks back to you. But the one thing that hasn't changed about the damn car is the internal combustion engine. I mean, we've come so far with all this other technology in cars, but yet we're still burning gasoline to move the damn things. And it's like, you're right, man, to keep retarding our progress and keeping it down, it's the same thing with the car. Think about that, man. Why is it that we still have internal combustion engines? I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I'm this communist Greenpeace type person. I love to see environmental causes. I'd love to see the air cleaned up, But at the same time, why are we still using internal combustion engine in cars over 100 years later when everything else about a car is advanced except for the engine? And it's because you got oil companies that make a profit off of keeping our progress and keeping our development slowed down. Is exactly what you said. So that was a good point. I just want to bring up that analogy.
It's true. I mean, that's actually a really great point. Like all the technology in the car, the Wi-Fi, the stereo, the sensors. I mean, people don't know this, but there's been wireless sensors in your car for years. In fact, one of the reasons, like a lot of the sensors used to go off, and a lot of they used to get false codes and stuff. They're just realizing this now is the old tint that they used to use in Windows has metal in it. And it was actually screwing with the Wi-Fi signals on some of these switches and stuff. But these things have been around for years. And now you have, like you said, you have cars that park themselves. Like people can just literally, we talk about the height of laziness too. Like, oh, I'm so lazy I can't even learn how to parallel park. Because parallel parking is so hard and scary. No, it's not. Just do it. If you're in there, first of all, most of the problem with people when it comes to driving and learning stuff like that is driving is a stressful situation. And then they're thrown in the car with like their father or their mother, and half the time the person teaching them is yelling at them and screaming at them, and that's a lot of pressure. So yeah, they usually don't learn too well. But now they have cars; you can just press a button, the freaking car parks itself, which is highly ridiculous. But how come we still operate on a technology that's like 100 years old, if not older? Like really? How are we? How are we operating on gasoline-driven or even diesel fuel-driven engines? How come we don't have floating cars yet? Although, right now, Danny, I don't think society's ready for floating cars. They can't even handle cars on 4 tires on the ground.
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I watched Back to the Future, and it made it seem like I can't wait to be in my 30s and be driving cars that fly. And now, I still see some of the cars on the road when I was 9 years old. They're still being driven by people. It's kind of insane, man. It's hard. And what's strange about it too? I have a friend, Mark, who lives in Boston. He's in We Are Change, Boston. I remember him coming down to New York a few times for the events and stuff, and he had an old diesel Mercedes that drove on corn oil. I mean, guys, the guy had a car, and the car was from the 80s, and it drove on corn oil. There's really no excuse or reason why we should still be pushing gasoline-powered cars. And there's a lot of places in other countries where they're driving cars that run on 100% ethanol, and we've had attempts at electric cars here, and it's always the same, and I don't want to get into the left-right paradigm thing, but this is the part of the left-right paradigm where, the right wing kind of bears the responsibility for this kind of disinformation, where they're always, sticking up for the oil companies and saying that, gasoline-powered fuel is still the most efficient and best fuel on the planet. And I'm like, no, it's not. Really? I mean, you invest technology into missiles that can fly, that can be launched from New York City, land into somebody's lap in Baghdad with remote laser-guided precision. But yet you don't have the technology to make a car drive on anything else but gasoline and build the infrastructure to make it feasible. I just don't believe that. I don't think anybody else with a brain believes that.
Well, it's because they spend the money in the wrong spots. You just said it. You just answered it. They spend the money on the missile, and they should be spending the money on infrastructure, roads, new technology, energy efficiency, things like that. I mean, the irony of the Department of Energy by itself, the Department of Energy was founded to get us off, or to wean us off of our dependency on foreign oil, in the 70s, around the time of the energy crisis. And since its inception, we've actually become more dependent on foreign oil. So, well done. Well done. Just another example of bureaucratic idiocracy. I'm going to cut us off because the break's sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. Got another hour and a half with Danny tonight. I told you, he's a deep, deep guy. 2 hours isn't enough to hang out with him. But we'll try to fit it all in. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I want to pick Danny's brain on a few topics. First thing I want to get into is the state of 9/11 truth. I don't know what to call. I don't like the term movement. I can't stand that term. I've always hated the word movement. But Danny, in your view, have you seen 9/11 truth, or whatever you want to call it, kind of slow down in the last few years?
Well, I got a few theories that I have about it, and they're not very popular. But I hold true to it, and I've had debates about it, and I've always been able to defend my point of view with it, and I always stand by it. And I know it's not popular, but the truth movement has definitely died down. And I honestly don't take this the wrong way. I got to explain it. I blame the Ron Paul revolution for the truth movement's, kind of demise and fall from grace. And I'll tell you how I came to that conclusion. As a 9/11, you know me as a 9/11 activist. That's how I came into this game. And I was a big Ron Paul supporter. And still am. I still do support Ron Paul. I love almost everything he stands for. I think he's the closest that we've ever gotten in our lifetime to an actual politician that, would benefit our society rather than hurt it. But as a 9/11 truther, when Ron Paul started picking up steam, and really the only reason why Ron Paul ever got as popular as he did is because he had the support of Alex Jones, InfoWars, Prison Planet, and the 9/11 Truth Movement were the ones that made Ron Paul who he is today. Because, he existed in the 80s, and nobody knew who the hell he was. Nobody even knew what a libertarian was back then. But what made Ron Paul so popular is the fact that, after 9/11, us 9/11 truthers and anyone who pays attention, who has half a brain, understands that 9/11 was an inside job. So every subsequent action or activity done by the government using 9/11 as a justification was complete garbage. And one of the biggest things that that the government used, the government did that they used 9/11 as a justification for was the Patriot Act. Ron Paul was one of the few politicians. Him and Dennis Kucinich were one of the few politicians that actually read the Patriot Act and voted against it at a time where everybody in America was scared for their lives and scared for their freedom, and they welcomed it. I remember watching Bush sign it, and you had 9/11 victims' family members there sitting right next to him, watching him sign away our entire Bill of Rights. People were confused, they were scared, they were hurt, and they were willing to accept anything that would guarantee them some sort of safety. Running to their slave masters, we know it as problem, reaction, solution, right? So that's the reason why Ron Paul got popular in the first place, was that, and because he was a non-interventionalist. And when we got onto Ron Paul because of his Anti-Patriot Act and non-interventionalist foreign policy, Ron Paul also put us on to things like the Federal Reserve. I mean, him and Aaron Russo were close. Aaron Russo did Freedom to Fascism, and that was connected to the 9/11 Truth Movement, and that kind of bridged the 9/11 Truth Movement to Ron Paul and classic libertarianism and the Fed and sound money supply and stuff like that, and lowering taxes and income tax fraud and the Second Amendment. And it kind of took the truth movement from discussing conspiracy theory in the eyes of everybody, in the eyes of most people who viewed that kind of stuff as conspiracy theory and government conspiracy. It kind of graduated us into this whole thing. Now we were learning constitutional law. Like, I know me, I became like this constitutional lawyer overnight. I was reading up on the Bill of Rights. I was memorizing it. So was everybody else in We Are Change. We started taking on other branches of activism like fluoride and the Fed. And I don't know if you remember Ed and Elaine Brown, out in New Hampshire. Do you remember them?
Yep.
They were big. They were big tax protesters. I remember when Luke went up there, he took pictures with them. So we kind of had 9/11, but we got introduced to other things. So as we started building Ron Paul momentum, that's when he started taking a run for the presidency seriously. See, the problem with that was it was great that we had our candidate running for president, but it sucked for us when in public and on TV he openly denounced 9/11 truth. I mean, explicitly saying things like, I don't believe it was a conspiracy. He would say occasionally on Alex Jones' show that he supports a new independent investigation if the people wanted it. That's kind of like a neutral, safe way to kind of, appease your original base of truthers and activists. But at the same time, when asked on Fox News, when asked on Glenn Beck and stuff like that, I've watched him live saying, I don't believe in any of that stuff. That stuff's crazy. He always went with the blowback approach to 9/11. How, it was Bin Laden and Muhammad Atta, and, the buildings fell down without explosives because somehow that made sense. But it was because of what we did and our actions there. But he always maintained the official story that of those events. And as an activist, I can tell you, Popeye, from straight up first-hand experience, I was one of those 9/11 truth activists that would go to a Ron Paul event and the meeting before the event discourage all the other activists to not wear 9/11 truth gear. I was one of those people because I kind of was compromising. I was saying, look, let's leave the 9/11 stuff at home. This is just going to be about Ron Paul. We don't want to ruin it. We're going to do the ends justifies the means type of thing. And I admit I compromised. Looking back on that, I wish I never would have done that. But the entire truth movement kind of compromised for Ron Paul, and we pushed him forward. When he failed twice, and his son started getting into it, and Rand Paul started building that momentum, as Rand Paul started growing popularity, I mean, the truth movement was completely left behind. Because remember, we left the truth movement behind and traded in for the Ron Paul revolution because we all saw that we can achieve something on a national level. We can actually have something tangible. Like, we can have our guy who will bring our troops home, end the Fed, dismantle the Patriot Act, bring down the IRS, and we can actually have a shot at putting a guy like that in the White House. So we kind of, left the truth movement behind. And no one's ever picked the truth movement back up. So whereas I think the Ron Paul revolution was a good thing because, it put us on to so much more information, as far as 9/11 goes, it completely killed it. And I can't stand Rand Paul. Like, I would much rather see a Hillary Clinton in office than a Rand Paul, because at least with a Hillary Clinton, I know that she's an enemy, and I can take her head on. With Rand Paul, the only thing that Rand Paul is going to do is do what Obama did to all the left-wing anti-war activists, put them to sleep and have them spend the next 8 years making excuses for the guy. Because, Obama sounded great when he was running for president. I mean, he was a civil liberties lawyer. We all heard the stories how he was going to promote transparency and he was going to be completely different from Bush. And he talked a good game, and then when he got in, it turned out to be he was exactly the same as Bush. Well, the same thing for Rand Paul. I mean, Rand Paul says a lot of things that we can agree with, like Obamacare, Second Amendment, hemp. But at the same time, I mean, he keeps saying the same nonsense. Like, standing with Israel, and an attack on Israel like attack on America, and he's made a commitment that he's always going to tie our foreign policy to Israel. So if Israel has a fight with Iran, we're inevitably going to be dragged into that. His dad, Ron Paul, wants to shut down Guantanamo. I've read about how Rand Paul wants to keep it open because we need some place to put the terrorists. His dad calls Snowden and Bradley Manning a hero, and then I read Rand Paul. I don't have any sympathy for Bradley Manning. Really? I mean, you don't have any sympathy for Bradley Manning, a guy, sacrificed his freedom to give people the truth, and he doesn't have any sympathy for Bradley Manning. And that's because Rand Paul's a sellout, and, he's just there to be the GOP's libertarian candidate to suck all of those Ron Paul voters over to the GOP. And that's exactly what he's doing. So for me, when you ask me, and I know why you ask, because, we don't ever see 9/11 activism anymore. Like, I really don't see it. I know the events just passed, and I don't think anybody had any actions going on back home that I'm aware of, and I used to be heavy into it as an organizer. So with 9/11, I've noticed that it's died down significantly, and I pinpoint it back to the Ron Paul revolution.
And there was a big to-do around the Tampa event, the RNC in Tampa, because there was that whole thing was hijacked, and there were people that were locked out, and then there were two events. There was a second event created, and I mean, I can tell you. No, go on. I
can tell you about that whole event. Paul Fest was actually organized by Panzella, Tracy Diaz, the Ragamuffin crew. And they held the Paul Fest 5 minutes from my house, right there at the Tampa Fairgrounds on State Route 301. And Ron Paul, on one of those days, was giving a speech at the Sun Dome at USF, the University of South Florida. And his organizer, or whatever the hell you wanted to call him, campaign manager Jesse Benton, was sending messages to Peter Schiff, who actually did speak at Paul Fest. We're not going there. They're a fringe group. They're conspiracy theorists. Because the people that organized Paul Fest had roots in the 9/11 Truth Movement. So Ron Paul never showed up to his grassroots thing. I know he didn't speak at the RNC. He took a stand, but at the same time, he completely shunned his grassroots movement down here, and that was pretty bad. But his son took an opportunity to speak at the RNC and throw his support behind the Mormon who wants to bomb Iran and basically wants to push everything that Bush was doing and what Obama was doing. Rand Paul had no problem selling out and throwing his unwavering support behind Mitt Romney by name. So, it all got messed up down here.
No, it did. I remember I interviewed Tracy about it. She came on, and we talked for 2 hours about it, and it was just all the shenanigans that were going on. And see, I find their logic is tainted. I mean, they're committing logical fallacies right there. They're using logical fallacies, whatever you want to call it. And they say, we don't want to go there because they're conspiracy theorists. Okay, so you're using an ad hominem attack that none of us could have any valid points or be any use to society because we're quote unquote conspiracy theorists. That's the definition of an ad hominem attack. It's to the man. Our message has no validity because we think, conspiracies exist. What I'd hate to break the news to everybody, but the term conspiracy does not mean UFOs, reptiles, and not now 9/11 truthers. Okay. Conspiracy, by definition, means two or more people getting together to do something bad. So, like, if Danny and I were bad guys and we decided we were going to rob a 7-Eleven and we got arrested, we got caught, we got arrested, one of the charges they'd hit us with is conspiracy to commit robbery. Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time, dude. You see it all the time. So, it's just, to me, they're committing logical fallacies, attacking the 9/11 truthers. And that whole thing in and of itself, they ought to be smart enough to know that the word truther is a label that comes straight out of Langley. They ought to know who creates labels and puts them into pop culture. They know where all that stuff comes from. If they've researched any bit of this, it all leads to the same. Look, all roads lead to Rome. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to come across. How do you think? You might have got involved. Via 9/11. There's other people that might have started getting involved into this thing because they looked into the economy or politics. But eventually you're gonna even if you come in via the economy, you bump into 9/11 and into politics. If you come in via 9/11, you bump into politics and the economy. You know what I'm saying? Like we all cross the same evidence eventually. So
Right.
they're committing a logical fallacy. Just see, to me, I don't know. I don't personally, and this is probably going to piss some people off. I don't trust Peter Schiff. I've never have. I don't trust him.
I don't either. I mean, I heard he was telling people there that you should vote for Mitt Romney, because he's the lesser of two evils. I mean, take a stand, have some balls, and say don't participate in the charade and don't vote for anybody, because that's the biggest stand. That's the biggest form of activism that you can do, is just not participate. By you going there and saying, well, vote for Mitt Romney because he's the lesser of two evils. First of all, I don't agree with that statement at all. I always saw Romney as worse than Obama, and I'm not an Obama fan by any means. I can't stand the guy, I despise the guy. But I always saw Mitt Romney as slightly worse than Obama, because at least Obama wasn't injecting, religious nonsense into the equation. Mitt Romney was bringing everything that Obama was bringing, but he was bringing that religious nonsense to it, and not to down talk about, to anybody that's religious. I respect people's, religious beliefs and stuff like that, but when you start pushing that stuff on a national platform in politics, what you're doing is you're injecting religious beliefs that people don't agree with, and you're saying, I'm doing this because I believe in Christ. Well, first of all, he believes Christ was born on the planet Kolob because he's a friggin' Mormon. So that's number one. And number two, make legislation because you believe it's right for the people. Don't do it because God told you to do it. Not everybody's going to believe the same thing you believe. So he was pushing the same things that Obama was pushing, the neoconservative wars and drone strikes, and he had his own national health care mandate too, but he always pushed that little religious thing there, so I always saw him as slightly worse. But, a guy like Peter Schiff, yeah, vote for Mitt Romney, lesser of two evils. I mean, come on, man. So what? We're going to commit ourselves to this douchebag for 8 years? And how is our lives going to get any better under Mitt Romney than they would under Obama? We'd be in the same shithole, So I don't really trust people like that, that don't have that are spineless, that'll just tell you to vote for the Republican. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed that, this whole libertarian and freedom, we went from 9/11 truth movement to now all I see everywhere is freedom movement and liberty movement and stuff like that. And, I agree with it. I think liberty and freedom are great. But like you said, you hate calling it 9/11 truth movement, and I understand why. Because the minute you start labeling something, it becomes this monolith. It becomes this thing that you can identify and pick apart. Like the liberty movement now is this beast. And when something's wrong with the liberty movement, something's wrong with everybody that's involved with it as a whole. Like the 9/11 truth movement. Like if something comes out where I know you remember back in the day during truth movement, people came out with these theories like no planes to the towers, or like a microwave beam knocked the towers down. That started becoming ubiquitous with 9/11 truth. Like people was looking at me and saying, "Oh, what do you believe that there was holograms?" And I'd be like, because we were the 9/11 truth movement, I got stuck with that, and I had to defend myself when people would come to me with asking me if I believe it was holograms. Same thing with the liberty movement. Nowadays you see it as it's just Republican nonsense. I mean, we saw it with the George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin thing. Now, regardless of how you feel about the case, I noticed that the libertarian and the liberty movement were just taking their opinions and drawing their conclusions straight from, websites like Breitbart and Fox News and Bill O'Reilly. It was synonymous. There was no difference. You can talk to a liberty movement person, and you could talk to somebody that watches Fox News, and they'll give you the exact same opinion about the Zimmerman trial. They'll give you the exact same opinion about Obamacare. I mean, they'll give you the exact same opinion about most things. Not all, but most. So I've seen the whole liberty movement kind of get sucked in to the whole Republican part of the left-right paradigm. And, like you said earlier, man, every road is going to lead back to 9/11 because 9/11 was the catalyst for all this stuff. Without 9/11, there would be no liberty movement. And I've had people yell at me and challenge me on that, but it's true. I mean, think about it. I mean, I was in high school. It happened when I was 19 years old. I was on the internet. I was paying attention to politics when I was young, not as much as I am now, but I never heard any liberty movement. I never heard anybody really talking about ending the Fed. I didn't even hear people talk about ending the Fed until 2006 when Aaron Russo dropped his DVD. You know, so
dude, the
even
whole world
even
was
the
changed that
immediate,
day. The whole world was changed. Like,
yeah.
like I'm even a
Well, you
different
hear it all the
person.
time. It says post 9/11 world. That's what we live in, a post 9/11 world.
Well, I mean, I'm
They
a
keep
different
pushing it
person,
down our
admittedly.
throats.
I
Oh,
used to
me
be
too. Yeah.
I used to be more of a, focus on. I had an ex-girlfriend say to me years ago, right after 9/11, she said, I was dating her at the time. She said, this is like 12 years ago at least. She said, you're a different person. You're not the same fun-loving guy. And I said, it's not that I'm not fun-loving. I like fun. I said, but my world changed. I said, for me, it was different. I was a firefighter. I volunteered with the Red Cross up there. For me, it was much different. And once I started to, once I got through the emotional aspect of it a few years later, and I started to look into it deeper, originally with the intent of debunking quote-unquote 9/11 truthers, right? I realized what was going on. But people that I've known when I was younger have said to me, you're a much different person. You used to be more like you didn't care. It was all about having fun. Well, I grew up. See, that happens. When I was younger, I was fun. I had a lot of fun, and I still do. It's not like I'm a boring individual, but to me, it's more fun to educate myself. Like, learning, to me, is one of the most, I don't know, it's one of the most exhilarating things. There's the same experience, I guess, the same feeling someone gets when they jump out of a plane and they go skydiving at 10,000 feet is the same feeling I get when I learn something new. And I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's because, it changes the way you look at things. And, like, you're looking at, it's like looking through a kaleidoscope. Like, everything changes the way you look at the world. Like, you learn something new about 9/11, and it completely changes. Like, one thing that I couldn't do anymore after I became active in the truth movement, I really couldn't watch the news on TV. Like, I wasn't big on the news when I was younger, before 9/11, before I got involved with We Are Change, but I could watch a Fox News or an MSNBC program or CNBC or even the nightly news and feel comfortable getting my information from there. After a while, I really couldn't watch it anymore because it's like, man, it just turns me off. Like watching the O'Reilly Factor is just awful, man. Like lie after lie after lie, and it's
I get enraged.
You're sitting there.
I get enraged.
Yeah, I do too.
Do you yell at the TV?
You're sitting there, it's a lie. I don't yell at the TV. Last time I watched it, me and my girl were watching it together, and I was just sitting there shaking my head, and she was wondering, like, why is he getting me so pissed off? And it's like, because I sit there and I hear lie after lie, and just sit there like, it's a lie, and I just want to scream at him, but I know he can't hear me through the TV.
No, you want to choke him. You want to go on
so
his set, and you want to beat his ass because he's a lying sack of crap. And he's disrespectful to boot. He's a total disrespectful turd. But I digress. Go on.
Yeah, and not only that, but I think about all the millions of people that are watching the program getting programmed by it. And it's like, damn, man, I feel like calling up the network and say, hey, can I just have 15 minutes on the air just to, rebuttal some of this stuff so people can get a fair look, so we can kind of like prevent the retardation of the people, and stuff like that. And it's like, no, you can't, because he's just up there and just spewing his nonsense. Sean Hannity and Piers Morgan and all these trash bags. They're just up there and they have an audience, and it just that's what really pisses me off. But I really couldn't watch the news the same way anymore. And but at the same time, there's so many other things that I can look at now and enjoy. I enjoy time with my family more now. Like me and my girl, we have a 15-month-old. He's never been vaccinated. He doesn't drink tap water with fluoride. It's all spring water. Where possible and when we can afford it, we feed him organic food. And it's, to me, it's enjoyable to have my family come up to me and tell me things like, oh, you're endangering your son by not vaccinating him, and then completely shutting them down because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Or going to the pediatrician and completely shutting the pediatrician down because they didn't expect you to know as much shit as you knew about vaccines. So, and things like that, it feels good.
I like when they get all defensive. They try to. I've had arguments with doctors about vaccines, and they try to debate me. No. Look, you don't know what you're talking about. You read some stuff on a crazy website. I go, really? Where'd you get your information from? And they look at me and they go, well, the manufacturer. I go, oh, so they wouldn't have any reason to lie to you or give you erroneous information, right? That their product is completely safe. Because, hey, the government says it's safe, right? So if the government says it's safe, obviously the government would never, ever harm you, right? Like, really?
Well, I got accused of infanticide by my pediatrician right in front of my girl. He was saying, you're the reason, people like you are the reasons why 30 to 40% of babies would die back, 50, 60 years ago, because I don't vaccinate or I don't feed my kid fluoride. And it was like so funny how he took it so personal. He kind of, accused me of that and saying I'm harming children. And he went on to say things like, because I told him, hey, if my kid's not vaccinated, but your kid is in school, what does it matter? You're protected. And he said something along the lines of, well, see, I believe in doing the good for the community and not just being selfish, so I'm going to vaccinate my son to help others. Like, kind of like throwing that insult in there. And it didn't faze me at all. I honestly didn't care because I expected it from the pediatrician.
Did we see how it's a non-answer? He didn't answer you. You noticed that, right?
Of course not.
He couldn't answer you. Like, if your kid's vaccinated, then you shouldn't really have anything to worry about, according to your logic, even though any doctor with half a brain would know that vaccinations do not give you immunization at all.
Of course. And, the funniest thing was, when we were talking about it, I said, yeah, but I don't understand. Why would somebody lie about, vaccines causing autism and stuff? He goes, the guy sold a lot of books. I go, yeah, and these pharmaceutical companies sell a lot of drugs. And he was kind of silent about that, too, because it's like, if you're going to accuse a guy of wanting to sell books, but you're not going to accuse the opposition of that guy supposedly trying to sell books for the fact that they profit probably 150 times more than that guy would ever profit on whatever books he'll write in his entire lifetime, just in a couple of years of selling these vaccines. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. As if to paint the guy out to be some money hungry, fraud or a trickster. But meanwhile, these pharmaceutical companies, they're only doing it because they care. They're not making a profit at all, when it's the other way around.
And that's the line of crap that they've been fed. I run into the same thing. Oh, that's just somebody that wants to sell their book or get hits to their website. And I'm like, really? And your information is coming from the people that stand to make a killing, literally, on the product that you're hawking for them. You're pretty much their salesperson for them. And I guess I shouldn't mention the $10,000 bonus that they give you, right, Doc? At the each year for pushing this crap. Or usually it's a new car or a house or a vacation, a month-long cruise or something. That actually goes on. I'm actually working on getting a guest. Used to be a representative for Big Pharma. That should be interesting. Top of the hour break sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. We still got another hour with my guest, Danny Roldan. Do not go anywhere. 3 minutes. Danny and I will be right back. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is October 17th, 2013. Tonight I am joined for the second hour by my guest for this evening. If you didn't hear the first hour, you have to go back and check it out. Make sure you do. Very, very raw, in-depth conversation with a real deal, old-school veteran activist, my good friend, Danny Roldan. And we've been getting into a bunch of things. And Danny brought up a point during the break that I want to stay focused on because it was something we started to get into last hour, and I'm glad that he wanted us to stay focused on this because this is something that we actually here at Down the Rabbit Hole, I specialize in, taking the media, the mainstream media, and sometimes even the faux alternative outlets out there to the woodshed when need be. And Danny pointed out something that is a major problem, and that is all of the logical fallacies that are out there that keep people, that the mainstream uses, that keeps people, even somewhat awake or aware people, arguing the left-right paradigm. And it's a method of control. I talk about this all the time, but I want to get Danny's take on this. So, Danny, when it comes to this method of control where they get people to engage in irrational debate, non-rational debate, using logical fallacies. Do you see it? Do you see it happening a lot still, even with people that are so-called awake and aware? And do you blame the media? Do you blame who do you put most of the blame on? Let's say, because I know it's a conglomeration of different sources, but what's your analysis of it?
Well, the way I see it is this. I mean, people who are stuck in their ways, and the majority of the voters, I concentrate on the people that actually go and make the decision to actually go out and vote, and that's mostly baby boomers and older. And those people, they're kind of stuck in their ways. I mean, you have the internet, which is full of resources for information, but those type of people, if you're stuck in a left-right paradigm, you're not learning anything, and you're not interested in learning anything new. People will surf the web and watch the news, and they'll watch their favorite programs not to learn anything, but just to get their pre-existing beliefs just reconfirmed. So that's the biggest problem with it all. And the problem is, like I was telling you on the break, when people start branching out into liberty movement this and start supporting candidates like a Rand Paul or a Ted Cruz, and you start bridging a gap between, the truth movement or the liberty movement and conservatives, you're inevitably going to pull their baggage into the mix with you, And you got to remember something. People, like I said, people are not interested in learning anything new for the most part. They're just looking to, reaffirm things that they already believe, So when you have people like that, it's very easy for them to be susceptible to propaganda and brainwashing. For example, the best example would be the Tea Party. To see how far the Tea Party has fallen, just to be, another Republican, cesspool. Think about it like this. Everybody's ranting, right? Like, one of the things that the Tea Party stands up for is the Second Amendment. Now, obviously, as 9/11 truth activists, we understand how important the Second Amendment is to a free society of free people. People might say that we have that in common with the Tea Party, or we have that in common with conservatives. But where we kind of differ is the sense that, nobody was really bringing up anything when Bush was taking people's guns during Katrina. And nobody was really saying anything of how the Patriot Act kind of, influences, gun ownership. But now that Obama's president and you have, a man of color, and you have a guy with a Muslim middle name, and you have a Democrat, all three, now all of a sudden it's like, Second Amendment this, and we got to be careful, we got to protect our guns. But these people were not interested in protecting their guns when Bush was president, when Bush was taking them. The same thing with the whole, the same thing with Medicare Part D, with Obamacare. He's forcing the Obamacare down everybody's throats. You can't keep the same insurance, rates are going up. I mean, Bush made the same promises with Medicare Part D, where if you don't have a prescription drug plan, you can keep the drug plan that you're on, or you can not choose to have one. Then when he pushed it, seniors were penalized and paid a tax penalty if they didn't take the Medicare Part D and have a prescription drug plan through Medicare. So nobody was really saying anything about that, and the hypocrisies still exist. And when I look to people and see if they're valid or not, I just see the doublespeak. And I say, hey, how much can you contradict yourself over and over? It's that cognitive dissonance, holding two completely conflicting beliefs at the same time and somehow thinking it makes sense. Like, think of how conservatives were reacting towards Syria. Obviously, Syria was a move that the president endorsed. The liberals turned neoconservative all of a sudden, were pushing war with Syria. But the conservatives were playing the anti-war thing. I saw a lot of conservatives and a lot of Tea Party people screaming, no war with Syria, we don't want war with Syria. But I mean, meanwhile, like just a couple of years ago, these people wanted to turn the entire Middle East into a glass parking lot. Like these people, like people in the Tea Party, these Republicans, they hate Muslims and they hate Arabs. But because it makes the president look bad, they, all of a sudden they were against, the war in Syria. And to me, like that's what I see. I see people just not willing to learn anything new, just if the tide is just hate on the president that's in there now because he's a Democrat, well, then that's just what they're going to do. And regardless, they're not going to agree with anything Obama says. The fact of the matter is the Tea Party should love Obama. They should love him to death because, I mean, this guy has been doing everything that they wanted. This guy's been doing everything that Bush has been doing. I mean, the people that think that Obamacare is this big socialist thing, it's not. It's a fascist thing. What Obamacare is doing, and the reason why they're having all this problem on the website, is because it's forcing people to purchase health insurance from private companies. Obama isn't giving you money to buy insurance. He's not giving you free health care. You get subsidies if you don't meet a certain income requirement. But at the end of the day, you're going on the healthcare.gov on the exchanges, and you're buying insurance from a private insurance company. You're being forced to purchase a product from a private company, but, you know, with fear of repercussion, of tax repercussions, and having the IRS down your throat if you don't. So, how, you know, once again, how is that social? You know, socialism would be if the government was providing your health care for you, you know, and if it was the government that was taking, you know, that was taking control of your health care, and you had to go to a government facility to receive your health care paid for by the taxpayer. It's fascism when the corporations control the government and they dictate. You got to remember, Liz Fowler was the one that wrote Obama. She was one of the main architects of Obamacare, and she was the vice president of WellPoint, which is one of the largest health care insurance industries in the world. You know, the private insurance companies, for the most part, wrote the damn thing. So this whole thing where it's like, you know, Obamacare is socialist. Most Tea Party freaks don't even know what the hell socialism means anyway. You know, we're living under fascism under Obama, which is the same exact thing that we were living under with Bush. So for all intents and purposes, you know, they should love Obama, but they don't because. And look, when Obama was being reelected and he went against Mitt Romney, I had a lot of arguments with people because I said certain things. I said, look, 80% of the hate directed towards Obama is race-related. And people were looking at me like, oh, you're a race baiter, and blah, 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 this and that. And I said, look, let me tell you something. If you are not up on 9/11, if you are not awake, and you're still in the left-right paradigm, and you hate Obama, you're not going to hate Obama for the same reason that me and you hate Obama, Popeye. We hate him for other reasons. You know, we hate him because we know he's the same as Bush. If you love Bush but hate Obama, you're stuck in the left-right paradigm. You probably hate him because he's black and he's got a Muslim middle name. That's just the fact of the matter. If you're awake, though, and if you're a truther and you're a Ron Paul supporter, that means you understand the problems with Obama. These people don't understand what's wrong with Obama. I mean, I've seen things on MSNBC where a woman was like, oh, he's a socialist, he's a communist. Well, what do you mean by that? How is he a communist? Oh, you know what I mean. Do you know what a communist is? Yeah. What is it? He's a con. And then she refused to answer. She was like a teabagging old friggin' lady that was just hating on Obama, and she couldn't even answer a question of what communism is. I mean, these people can't. And you know what's funny? They had this protest over there by the White House where they were waving around the Confederate flags, and this guy was saying, we want Obama to come back to get off his desk, put the Quran down, and come out of the White House. Like, I mean, you expose yourself as a moron. Put the Quran down,
and that's why they focus on. The media focuses on people like that because they're easily, you know, that's an easy straw man that they could set up right there and go, oh look, see, this is what all of these people think. Like they labeled all the veterans that brought all the barricades to the White House. They're like, oh, those are teabaggers. They weren't. There were veterans. That wasn't the Tea Party. Or the conservatives, you wouldn't have seen a quote unquote political side out there picking up the barricades. That was veterans that did that. Okay,
right.
So
I don't know if you know this about how me and Danny Panzella first met, but me and three others, my friend Dom, my friend Anthony, and another friend Colin, we all changed Staten Island. We actually went to a Staten Island Tea Party rally back in 2009 it was, and I went there. We went there with the 9/11 banners. You know, like the stuff we used to have, 9/11 was an inside job, big banner, and the info boards. We brought flyers with us. I wore my Tyranny Response Team shirt that I got from Infowars.com, and we went there. I didn't know the extent of how the Tea Party was hijacked. I was going there expecting to meet a bunch of, like, info warriors and, you know, a bunch of other people that knew about 9/11. When I tell you, when I got there, that we were almost physically assaulted by a bunch of racist, ignorant Republicans. Some of them dressed like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, waving Gadsden flags. Like, they looked the part, but they were sitting there saying, "Oh, you're disgusting with this 9/11 crap, and you know, you disgust me. You're disrespectful." And I'm asking them, like, you know, who's your presidential candidate? I like Bush. I hope we get McCain. What about Ron Paul? Ron Paul's a conspiracy theory. Like, they hated Ron Paul, this Tea Party movement. I was shocked, man. I was shocked. And one of the common themes there at the Tea Party rally, supposedly, and this is the first time I heard about this, but supposedly, according to these Tea Party people and these these liberty folks that I met there, apparently Obama is a secret Muslim imam, like he's a Muslim priest, cleric, that was sent here by the Muslim Brotherhood in secret to be elected and to turn America into an Islamic state. We've yet to see the Islamic State yet, but they swear to God that by the time his second term is up, we're going to have mosques on every corner, and our women are going to have to be covered up and stuff like that. And, like, that's the stuff, that's the type of garbage that I was getting from these people at this Tea Party movement. And I was sitting there, like, I was so confused. I was upset because I was very discouraged, Popeye. I was like, you know, we're going here. You know, there's a lot of people that, you know about the Constitution. This is the Tea Party stuff, all the stuff that I was reading on InfoWars about Tea Party rallies going on around the country where they're freedom-loving. And then I get here and I just hear this nonsense. It's like, and I'm trying to tell people, look, I'm not a fan of Obama either. I don't like Obama. But I'm not going to sit there and push First of all, you're calling me a conspiracy nut for saying 9/11 was an inside job. And 2 seconds later, you're trying to convince me that somehow Obama is like this secret Muslim agent, that he was brought here and America's in danger of becoming an Islamic state. Like, how the hell does that make sense to people?
Oh, dude, I know. I run into it, and again, and then you have there's the opposite side of the coin too, which they have their own beliefs. But I know what you mean. It's a false idea that's pumped out by certain people that have, you know, it's amazing, you know, the messages that get the financial backing and the messages that don't get the financial backing, right? The positive stuff, the truth, doesn't get the backing that this propaganda, this emotion stoking propaganda does. And I know what you mean, dude, because I have people that I'm close to that are they're adamant, like, you know, I hate Muslims, and I'm like, why? And they're like, well, you don't understand. You just don't understand. I know, trust me. They're no good, none of them. They want to kill, they want to kill all Christians. And I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, the Muslims are told that all the Christians want to kill all the Muslims too. There's a faction of them that are told that too. I said, but is that true? I said, you're fulfilling that stereotype by saying something like that. You know what I mean? And it gets frustrating because it comes from people that I really respect and that are really, really intelligent. And it's like, dude, I expect you to have a little bit better of a perspective on things by now, given the totality of information you have available to you.
Right. And, it's just people that are, it's emotion-driven. People are still pissed off about 9/11. I mean, being from New York City, I remember, I was living in Florida at the time, but I remember the big movement to stop a mosque being built near Ground Zero. And, the whole and I'm talking to Republicans and conservatives about this, both back home and down here in Florida, asking people's opinion. And it's like the crazy things that I was hearing about it. I mean, these are people that literally, like, if you talk to them about 9/11 truth, at that Tea Party rally, I thought I was going to get punched. Like, you can ask Dom Andriano, you can ask anybody that I went with. Find them all on Facebook and ask them about the Tea Party rally that we went to, and they'll all tell you the same. People got in our face. I thought I was going to get hit. Seriously. I met Danny Panzella there for the first time, and he was part of that Tea Party group, but he was already waking up, and he later got kicked out of the group for associating himself with We Are Change. But these people get violently opposed to 9/11 truth conspiracies, right? But at the same time, they're sitting there telling me that they're protesting the mosque at Ground Zero because Muslims usually build mosques on top of the land they conquered. And the Muslim mosque that's being built at Ground Zero was a Muslim conspiracy from Al-Qaeda to build a mosque at the site where they conquered America.
I think it was I personally think that whole thing was a conspiracy, but I don't think it was a Muslim conspiracy. I think that whole thing, because if you notice, it roared up and then roared down right after 9/11, and it ate up a lot of the attention about the positive events that were going on that anniversary, on that particular year, and it's amazing how it derailed all the good things that were going on, and then it suddenly went away. Like, where's all the anger?
Well,
and all the people involved with that chick, I forget her name, Pamela, whatever the frick her name is, she's shady. And she's another one. Like, even if she actually believes what she's talking about, well, that's even worse, because, I mean, she runs around stoking people's emotions, just filling people with unfounded fear. Look, ladies and gentlemen, let's get something straight right now. There are not Muslim boogeymen hiding in your closet waiting to cut your head off. Yes, there are evil Muslims out in the world that cut people's heads off. There's also evil Christians, evil Jews, evil Buddhists, evil Scientologists, whatever friggin' religion you'd like to pick. There are bad people that fall under that quote-unquote religion. Okay? Right, Danny?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And, that goes back to what we said in the beginning. Like, human beings are... we're violent creatures. Violence doesn't have a particular religion that it favors. I mean, you can be an atheist and still be violent. I mean, come on. The Soviet Union, the communist Russia was under Stalin was a big, was a atheist country there, and they were very violent. But at the same time, like you said, with the whole thing with the mosque, I mean, the whole controversy with the mosque, man, it wasn't a new mosque that was being built. It was a mosque that existed that was actually damaged on 9/11 that they were renovating and building on top of and expanding. And people got all bent out of shape over it. And then in Staten Island, where I'm from, the actual borough that I grew up in an area called South Beach, right by the beach, there was a Catholic church where the bishop sold the property to a Muslim imam, and they were going to turn it into a mosque. And a whole bunch of conservatives and a whole bunch of people started protesting that mosque. And there was a few people that were in charge of that protest that I saw that they were complaining, well, we're only protesting it because of parking issues. And I know for a fact that they didn't give a shit about the parking issues. It was all about the fact that they're protesting a mosque being built. But, I mean, I saw, signs, no mosque, no Muslims.
But who stoked those emotions? That's what I want to know. I'm willing to bet, and this is just speculation, but I'm willing to bet that at least 50% of the time you could trace back the people that, if you traced it back to the people that stoked the emotions of these supposed protests, it would go to some shady individuals like that mosque near Ground Zero, that whole thing. Because, like I said, not so much the mosque, when I said it was a conspiracy, not so much the mosque itself, but the anger and the faux rage and everything that it right before 9/11, it amped up. And then it was, that way any 9/11 event that was going on got, overshadowed by this crap. And then right afterwards, all that anger that was, oh my God, the mosque near Ground Zero, how disrespectful. And where'd all the anger go? Hey guys, are you still pissed? Where'd you go? I don't see it anymore.
It was a losing battle. They ended up losing. You can't stop a mosque being built. You have freedom of religion here. And that's a funny thing you can ask a teabagger. I mean, hey, I've met teabaggers where they had shirts with the We the People Constitution on them. And it's like, what happened to your freedom of religion where you're protesting a mosque? What the hell happened to that? You missed the Constitution, But I know some of those people, like I've had personal conversations with them. It's not so much that it was drummed up by certain individuals. You got to remember, there's an audience for it. People can drum up anything they want, but if there's no audience for it, it's never going to take root. Those people that were protesting the mosque at Ground Zero were more than receptive to whoever was pushing the nonsense about, the Muslims building a mosque there to signify their conquest.
You're right.
There might have been people in the media that were pushing that, but then again, all those people showed up because they know that it pushed the right buttons. There's a pan-Islamophobia that has infested America since 9/11.
Oh my God!
And for the most part, it hasn't gone away.
And then they chastise people for it. Oh, you're being Islamophobic.
Right.
You guys are the people that made everybody Islamophobic. The government, the media.
Exactly.
I mean, you guys have everybody convinced that anybody that worships Islam is going to fly a plane into a building, kill everybody, blow something up, or cut someone's head off, or possibly eat your newborn baby. I mean, that's the kind of crap that people believe. Seriously, dude, it's so irritating because it's like not all Muslims are evil, just like not all Christians are evil, not all Jews are bad, not all Buddhists are bad, but yet there are evil people in all of those religions. Okay, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of common sense to figure this out, but I know what you mean, dude. A lot of it is an emotion, but that hatred that's based off of ignorance. You know what I mean? What irritates me is when you bring it up to somebody and they refuse to hear it. Like they'd rather buy into that emotion.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they're then like I said, man, they're not interested in learning any. Look, they don't want their beliefs challenged. Like 9/11 happened. The government blames the Muslims. The story is believable to the people to believe the commission report, and they go on with their lives. They have the enemy. The American government's taking care of it. We can do our part by just seeing something, saying something, and at the same time, they hate Muslims. It's easy to do that, and people are naturally collectivist. So that feeds into people's ideas of us versus them mentality. That goes with all types of wars and stuff like that. But it's like the point that you brought up earlier, man. People are just it's going to be emotion driven. You hear even the smartest of people fall victim to this misinformation and stuff like that. And what bothers me about it all, it just gets in our way as truthers, as people that not even to label ourselves truthers, as people that are just awake and just want to see a change or a difference, or at the very least just see friggin' Bush and Cheney behind bars for their part in 9/11. Like, we're trying to get this stuff done for years, and we're depending on these people. We're depending on the Tea Party, and we're depending on these liberal Obama supporters to wake the hell up, because we need the numbers. We need them. We can't just do it ourselves. There's only, if you have 500 people at a 9/11 event in New York City, it's a city with a population of 8.5 million. 500 people may seem like a lot at a protest, but when half of them are from out of town, it's nothing, man. That city has 8.5 million people in the 5 boroughs alone, not including Jersey, not including Long Island, Connecticut, Westchester County, and all the surrounding areas. 8.5 million. I think there's 1.5 million people in Brooklyn alone. There's 500,000 people in Staten Island alone. So 500 people at a 9/11 event is just not going to cut it. We need these people that are asleep. We need these ignorant fools to wake the hell up. And every time I hear them talking about some secret Muslim plot, I just have to shake my head. And it's like, dude, man, you don't know how far back you're setting our country and our civilization and our people by just being inundated with this nonsense. And I know I've been picking on the Tea Party a lot. I could switch gears and talk about the Obama supporters, where all of a sudden it's cool to drone and bomb people. Like, I talk to these, oh man, you should go to that Staten Island politics site, man. I have arguments with the Obama supporters, and I'm like, look, your president assassinated an American citizen and his 16-year-old son. And the response is, well, I agree with that. And I'm like, yo, you people parade yourself around that you voted for the constitutional lawyer that, Republicans are taking people's rights away. Republicans are the ones that are stopping gays from getting married and, keeping marijuana illegal and, and infringing on women's rights to get abortions and all these civil liberties that Republicans infringe on. But yet at the same time, you agree with the president assassinating an American citizen without due process, without any evidence whatsoever, and his 16-year-old son? Like, these people are just as brainwashed.
No,
and every time I run into a moron like that...
No, I'm going to cut us off, but no, I agree. That's a great point. These people, both sides, doesn't matter, dude. They buy into this false spectrum of, well, it's okay when their guy is in office. I'm going to cut us off right there. Break sneaking up. Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. Final half hour. Danny coming up. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment. Man, I just don't have enough time to talk to Danny. I'm going to have him back on sooner than later. Before we get back into it, I'm going to make him take another minute or so and shamelessly plug his stuff again. Danny, go ahead. Plug the radio show. Plug any Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, anything you want to throw out there, any websites, anything. It's it's on. Go ahead.
Awesome, man. Thanks, man. Hey, it's me and Danny Panzella. He just completed a documentary called "Does Pot Cure Cancer?" and he just got finished traveling around filming that. But me and him, we do a radio show called the Ragamuffin Radio Show. It's 7:30 to 9 every Sunday night. We go live. Me and him. Sometimes we go at it in friendly debate. Sometimes it gets heated, but it's always a good listen, and you'll learn something. And anybody that's in Florida, in the Tampa area, that's listening, Stand Up for Florida. If you go on Facebook, find the group Stand Up for Florida, join it. We always have events and things that are going on in the Bay Area. If you want to get involved locally, whether it's March Against Monsanto activism, chemtrails and geoengineering activism. Right now, my friend Timothy Crosby and Stand Up for Florida group, they're at a Seffner. It's a town close to Tampa. They're at a DUI checkpoint and handing out leaflets and information about the Second Amendment. So if you're in the Tampa Bay area and you want to get involved, Stand Up for Florida is a good place to start. And we always have Tim is a bi-weekly guest on the Ragamuffin Radio Show on Sundays, 7:30 to 9.
Awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to go check the radio show out. I remember it was probably about a year ago when I had Danny and Tracy Diaz on, and we were talking about what was going on in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, and the two of them were, it was that, and they had come on talking about other things around the same time, and I just said, you guys have this great flow, you should end up doing a radio show together. And off air they had thrown some names around, and I was like, oh yeah, go for it. If you have conversations with your friends, but you hope maybe they do it. And they actually did. They followed through with it, and it's been interesting to see the growth of the radio show. And I think it's great that you guys actually do it together now. And I think it's good that you two debate each other because you're both smart, you're both good guys, you both have you have good intentions in your heart. Neither one of you is an evil prick. And your differences, I think, is what makes the flow so good on the show, back and forth between the two of you. I like it. And where can people, if they want to grab the archives of the older shows, where can they grab the archives from?
I think you can go to freedomizerradio.com, 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 or blogtalkradio.com, or, if you have, most people have Facebook these days anyway. If you're listening to the show, most likely you've found the link on Facebook anyway. You can friend me or Danny Panzella and go like the Ragamuffin Radio Facebook page, and from there you can find links that will link you to the sites to find the archives. And we have plenty of archives going all the way back from when I started back in June.
Awesome. So go check out his archives. Tune in when you can. Download. I tell people, there are a lot of people. Oh, I can't tune in live. That's cool. Rip my archives. It's the same thing. Go rip Danny's archives. Danny and Danny. You guys should do a show called Danny and Danny. Really, they have a good flow. They're both smart guys, and again, neither one of them, even though sometimes. They have New Yorker in them. That stuff will never go away. So it comes off maybe to the Southern people or whatever, or maybe to the Midwesterners as an attitude, but it's part of their flavor. So tune in. I promise you guys won't be disappointed. And if you can't tune in live, like I said, rip their archives. So Danny, last half hour here. I want to get into. I want to stay on this topic a little bit because it's going to segue into the solutions. The topic of. The people being stuck in this left-right paradigm and this arguing back and forth. You brought up an interesting point during the break that one of the reasons you go to these forums, certain forums where people are really stuck hardcore in that left-right paradigm, is because pretty much that's where the battle is. The battle isn't in the forum where everybody agrees with each other. It's where people are, ignorant to the facts, I think that's a good battle strategy, because that's the whole point, is to not really want to hate on each other and go, I don't want to talk to those people, because that's what the powers that shouldn't be want. We should engage them in conversation. We just have to. I think part of the problem is they don't understand. A lot of these people don't understand logical fallacies. That's why I think it would behoove us because this is what I do in my personal life, and I do this when I interview people if they're going off the rails, but most of the time, people that come on my broadcast never go off the rails, and people for some reason don't want to debate me. I can't understand why, but when I won't get locked into a logical fallacy filled debate. I'll stop them and be like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to debate you unless you come at me with facts and don't bring logical fallacies. I'm not going to debate you in an irrational argument. I will only have a rational debate with you. And that a lot of times shuts people down because they don't even realize, half the time people are committing logical fallacies without even realizing they're doing it because they've been programmed to do it, almost like on automatic instinct. But you have an interesting way of handling it yourself. Like you said, you go into, what is it called, Staten Island politics. It's on Facebook, right?
Yeah, it's just because I'm from Staten Island, so it's basically a group that was started by a bunch of people, baby boomer age, maybe a little bit younger and stuff like that. And it's a forum where they go on and they it's anything from local Staten Island politics, about borough presidents and councilmen and councilwomen and stuff like that, to geopolitics. And it's left-right paradigm concentrated, meaning that for the most part, the people that participate there are either Obama supporters or Mitt Romney supporters. Like they're Republican or Democrat. It's just me. I know you're in the group as like an observer, but there's a few people out there that are anarchists and they exist outside of that. But for the most part, it's a left-right paradigm breeding ground. And I like this, people ask me all the time, and people tell me too, like, man, you spend too much time arguing with these fools. And it's not that I go there because I enjoy arguing with the fools. I like to go there and I have to see what the hell is going on with these people. Like, I want to see what the topic of discussion is. Like, and I get into it a lot. I participate in it a lot. But for the most part, I observe. And I'll tell you what I observe. The left-right paradigm, they're fighting over things like Obamacare is the biggest thing right now. Like, they're going back and forth nitpicking about Obamacare and blaming each other for the government shutdown. And it's funny because if you think of it in this way, they're arguing about Obamacare while Edward Snowden is still in asylum. The NSA spy program has not stopped or slowed down, even after the lid was blown off the damn thing. The cover was blown off the entire NSA spy program. People now know that their phone conversations, their text messages, their emails, and all their online activity is being extensively monitored, and it's being sent to Israel. So, they're actually sharing our personal information with the state of Israel and the Mossad, and it hasn't slowed down, even though people are fully aware of it now, because nobody's talking about it. People are caught up in this Obamacare crap, and is Obamacare a good thing? No, it's not. But it's inconsequential. And I was actually on Anthony Antonello's show a week ago, and we talked about it too. And I brought up something. I said, look, you can tell when a topic doesn't mean shit when they're letting you talk about it. Like, for example, after the Newtown shooting in Connecticut, and after the Aurora, Colorado shooting, it was a big thing about the Second Amendment. People are going to try to take our guns. They're going to use these tragedies to take away our Second Amendment, which is true, which is bad, and I think that they shouldn't be doing that. But the simple fact that Piers Morgan is talking about it with Alex Jones on air leads me to believe that the Second Amendment is a non-issue. It really isn't an issue at all. It's really not that important of an issue, because they'll talk about the gun grabbing, but they won't talk about the SSRIs and the mind-altering drugs. They won't talk about MKUltra and all the mind control programs that existed in the 50s and 60s that they claim don't exist today, like Project Bluebird, MKUltra, Project Artichoke, MK Naomi, and all these projects that specifically studied and developed psychological programs where they can activate people to do all sorts of crazy stuff, like commit a mass shooting. Like, these mass shootings that are happening is the exact course of study that things like MKUltra and Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke, those are what they were designed to create. But the media won't talk about it. If you bring it up, you're a conspiracy theorist, and you get ridiculed, you get shot down, you don't get taken seriously. But they'll debate all day for months about the Second Amendment and, should we have gun control, this and that. Think about it like this, Popeye. Look, you have a Second Amendment. people, they want to ban the AR-15s and the assault rifles, right? Let's say they don't ban the assault rifles and we get to keep our guns. What is the main thesis that people say, oh, we need to keep our guns because of what? We have to fight government tyranny, right? Well, I guarantee you, Popeye, that if you have a neighbor that has beef with the FBI and the FBI descends upon his home with tanks and machine guns, he is not going to be able to fend them off with his AR-15. It doesn't matter if he's allowed to have a automatic weapon or not. He's going to need his entire neighborhood to back him up. Now, I know that there's people out there that if the FBI comes storming into somebody's house with automatic weapons and body armor, it doesn't matter if everybody else in the block owns a gun. If nobody's willing to sacrifice themselves to fight your battle with you, with the government, you're pretty much on your own. Your Second Amendment doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, we don't live in the times of colonial era. The gap between the firepower of the state and the firepower of the people is infinite. I mean, we don't have a nuke. We don't have missiles. Nobody's going to have a tank in their backyard. I mean, the government, if they want to blow your city up, they'll do it. And no amount of Second Amendment is going to stop them from doing that at the end of the day. So I think that the Second Amendment is kind of a topic where they just allow you to argue about it. It's like, you know what, you want to argue about that, fine. You can talk about the Second Amendment, but as long as you're not talking about the mind control that we've been doing for decades that leads to this stuff, as long as that's not being brought up, that's fine. Same thing with Obamacare, dude. And all these topics, when I go on these little forums and I see that the left-right paradigm sheep are arguing back and forth about things like Second Amendment and Obamacare, they're not really talking about stuff that's important. 9/11 never gets talked about at all, ever. And the establishment, they like it that way. I mean, if the mainstream media can control the discourse and they can control the dialectic, that's all they really want, man. Like hemp legalization. You can talk about hemp legalization all day. If they're letting you talk about it and they're giving you a platform, that means they don't really care about it. What I've learned, what really matters, I'll tell you what I think, and this is just my opinion, but this is from me reading books like John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and all the books that I've been reading for the past 4 or 5 years, from Webster Griffin Tarpley to Chris Hedges, everything. I figure this: the main issue here, when it comes to geopolitics, is the fact that imperialism has never gone away. It's like the days of Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, Julius Caesar, except those great conquerors that set out to conquer the known world, they've been replaced by Bank of America, AIG, ExxonMobil, Raytheon, General Electric, and big giant conglomerates and companies that pull the strings. Those conquerors don't exist anymore. Now it's conquering on a corporate, on a globalization scale. So when you're not talking about imperialism and Israel and Zionism, because we know Zionists control our foreign policy. If you want to debate that, just take a look at every major conflict that the U.S. has been in the past 20, 30 years. I mean, it's always been tied to Israel's beef in the Middle East with their Arab neighbors. I mean, any time the United States has a beef with an Arab state, it's because of our relationship with Israel. They've dragged us into it. AIPAC is the strongest lobby in Washington. They're not even registered as a foreign lobby, but yet that all they do is lobby our politicians to pass favorable laws and keep the money flowing to a foreign state, which is Israel. They have the Anti-Defamation League to make sure anyone that talks about it is labeled anti-Semitic and gets their credibility ruined. So as long as you're not talking about stuff like that, they don't care. As long as, for example, Rand Paul. Bro, Rand Paul can talk about the Second Amendment all he wants. He can talk about hemp. He can talk about Obamacare. He can talk about, filibustering. But, I mean, if this guy is going to continue to suck up to Israel and continue to tie our foreign policy to Israel and continue the imperialism of the United States, that's all they really care about. I mean, all these other issues, to me, they're kind of distractions.
Well, you're right. I mean, to a certain degree, there is a lot of stuff out there that, when you look at it like that, you're right. They don't talk about the SSRI connection. When they do talk about any type of mental health connection, it's always, we need stricter mental health checks, which that equates to, we think you're crazy so you can't have a gun. That's just
Right.
one more method of control and clamping down on things. That's not talking about the fact that these drugs are what they're doing on a mass scale to the general public is like what they were doing on a smaller scale to individuals when they were drugging them with all sorts of different drugs and mind altering chemicals and medications. They're in the MK Ultra trials, which they say stopped, but did they really stop? I mean, or are we just seeing the MK Ultra trials on a massive scale? And MK Ultra was really just an umbrella name for all the different experiments they did. So, are we seeing the drug experiment aspect that they did? With the fluoridation and everything. I have a friend of mine and friend of my wife's. Somebody that's close to him, he takes Prozac when they have anxiety attacks, and it came up in conversation. I said, "Tell him to stop taking it," and he was like, "Really?" And I said, "Dude," and I gave him information about, like valerian root and regular natural melatonin, and I was like, "Try natural stuff first." Like I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to tell you what, Prozac is made from a fluoride compound. That stuff is no good. It's going to do nothing but cause problems. I mean, fluoride causes bone cancer. It calcifies your pineal gland. It's no good on so many levels. That stuff is horrific. Personally, I think that's what they're doing. I think that these drug trials, what you see are like massive trials. I mean, even this shill from Monsanto that works for CBC up in Canada, he was interviewing this 14-year-old girl, and she said, "Oh, there hasn't been any long-term trials on the GMO food." And he said to her, "Well, of course there is. You're seeing it now. We're the long-term trial." Like, dude, I don't want to be a guinea pig. And that's the same mentality they have with these medications. And I really think that, that it goes much deeper than, these AstraZeneca cares about you. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, profit-driven, like we said earlier. But, the issue to me is, how do we... Like, I go to those forums and I see what they're talking about because it's important for me to gauge the evolution and see, is anybody waking up? What's the topic of distraction now? And it's the whole Obamacare thing. It's like, okay, so I'll take a sheep that's too preoccupied with Obamacare, and not to, like I said, not to say that Obamacare is a good thing. It's not a good thing, but to be so preoccupied with it when the criminals that knocked down our buildings and killed 3,000 of our people and have justified large-scale wars for it, when those people are still walking around free as a bird, I think we can put the Obamacare aside for a second and let's focus on that and bring it back to that. How do I wake that up to these people that are just so ensconced in the left-right paradigm? And you wanted to bring up solutions, and you wanted to bring up how do we bring 9/11 truth back into it? There's only really one way to bring 9/11 truth back into it, and that's just to start talking about it again. And that's it. Like, if you follow me on that forum, I'm always posting 9/11 truth stuff. Now, most people, for the most part, ignore it because they don't want to see it. But for the most part, just start talking about it again. I mean, have shows about it again. Make it as a topic. Just dig through. Have forums about it. Educate people about it. I think that we've gotten so diverted from 9/11 and started talking about all this other stuff that it's great to get involved in other things, but at the same time, the catalyst that started it all has now been pushed in the background, and those people have gotten away with it. And you know what else we don't do anymore, Popeye? I don't see anybody truth squatting anymore. I remember when I was an activist running around with Luke and Sabrina and them with We Are Change New York City, we used to, if there was a politician in town or if somebody was doing a book signing, they were not leaving the city without being confronted by We Are Change. We were posting videos sometimes multiple times a week. Nowadays, I don't even see that anymore. Nobody even cares anymore to confront these politicians and ask them anything. Not even just about 9/11. They don't even ask them about anything. Nowadays, all you see are people supporting frickin' politicians like Ted Cruz and friggin' Rand Paul and this guy Lonigan that just lost in New Jersey, the Republican, to Cory Booker. All these liberties, quote-unquote liberty people were supporting the Republican guy. Like, these people now, they're supporting scumbag politicians when 3, 4, 5 years ago we were not letting them leave our town without putting a camera on them.
You're right. Part of the problem is I think everybody because Luke kind of became famous for that because the spotlight was on him. I think a lot of people just thought that he would always do that, and I don't think people realize that when you start this, you evolve. Like I started off, just doing the website, and we had street actions. We would do screenings down here at like FIU. We would get a space, and then we would advertise the screening free for everybody, and people would come from all over. We would have screenings down in like Kendall and stuff, which is South Miami, and we would go all over the place. And, we would give out DVDs, and then it led to, me, I was started to reach more people with just the work I was doing on the website, and then it led to me doing my radio show, and it ends up morphing. And I think a lot of people just kind of took it for granted that Luke was doing a lot of these, interviews, which he still does. He gets in people's faces, but you can't just depend on Luke. He's one person. The kid can only do so much as an individual, and he does a lot. But he should be an inspiration to others to do the same thing. Those kids in Portugal, I think it was, when they got in David Rockefeller's face in the wheelchair when they were wheeling him out. That's the kind of stuff people need to do. They need to confront these scumbags. Like Hillary Clinton and all these other people that walk around in opulence, they think they are who the hell they are. They need to be called out. Who cares if they have security and there's goons all over the place? I remember a day when we didn't care about that crap. And yeah, you know what? The attitude is a little bit more amped up. They probably are more apt to maybe punch you in the face, but you never know. Maybe they're more apt to say, I'm going to look the other way. I've seen it happen. I've seen both happen recently. I've seen where the cops want to punch, attack everybody, jackbooted thugs, and then I've seen it where the cops are like, hey, I don't see anything wrong, So, we have to get back out there. I think and it doesn't mean you have to go out and do street actions. We could morph from that. You don't have to stand on the corner with a bullhorn. Sometimes I think that's more, works more against you than it does for you because people don't want to hear screaming through a bullhorn. Have screenings. Get DVDs. Download. So go get a hard drive. Go buy one. Okay. I offer the service at Federal Jack. Everybody knows this, that I have 3 terabytes worth of stuff, and I sell the hard drives, and because I have to go out and buy the drive and everything. But honestly, do it yourself. Just go buy a 4 terabyte hard drive and start downloading everything you can. Pay for high speed internet for 3 months and spend 8 hours a day, whatever, and just rip everything from everywhere that you possibly can and just start archiving things and have screenings. Play it on your home stereo, buy DVDs. Just start to have these conversations again. Don't be afraid if you bring up 9/11 and someone says, oh, you crazy, kooky conspiracy theorist. I think that's the other thing is a lot of people get afraid of being labeled. Who cares? Screw what these people are going to say if they yell at you. You point out the fact that that's a logical fallacy and tell them, look, debate me rationally with facts, not logical fallacies. Point out that they're coming at you from an ignorant standpoint. It's going to piss people off, by the way, when you do that. I'm not ignorant because people think that you're insulting them. Ignorance means that if you're ignorant, you can be educated. I was ignorant about a lot of this stuff too. We got about 2 minutes, Danny. What do you think? What's your analysis in the last few minutes here?
Well, I have people tell me say things like, "Oh man, you're kooky for this 9/11 stuff," and my response to it all the time is like, "Look, it's been 11 years or it's been 12 years. If you still believe in the official story 12 years later, there's something wrong with you." I flip it around because honestly, we have to start changing that paradigm. At the end of the day, it's not us that's kooky. It's if you believe in the commission report, there's something wrong with you mentally. You're at a psychological or logical impasse that you can't get past, and the finger needs to be turned around in the other direction and pointed at you. People tell me it all the time. I say, look, oh man, there's so much information on there, and you're still pushing that government crap when it's been thoroughly debunked. People tell me all the time, yeah, your conspiracy has been thoroughly debunked. I'm like, really? Where? Because all I see every time I look at it, that the commission report has been completely debunked. I flip it around on them. It's tough, man. I think that you said the thing with the screening. The screening's a great idea. We were doing that in downtown Manhattan for a while. That's a good idea if you want to take friends and family that you're close to and say, hey, you want to come watch this free movie? And you bring a couple of family and friends over that you can show them the movie and then have a discussion about it later. But I think the bullhorn activism still serves the purpose, man. And people will see, motion creates emotion. So if people see people out in the street, moving
Oh,
around.
I agree to a certain extent. I think there are certain people that are effective at that. There are certain people that might be effective doing screenings. Maybe people do more radio shows. I encourage people to do more radio broadcasts like you and Danny are doing, like I do, like, all these other great hosts are doing, websites. Engage people in debate. And if they, a lot of people are afraid to talk to others because, they start whipping out logical fallacies. First of all, go understand the basics of rational debate and understand the basics of what a logical fallacy is, okay? And then go, and when you debate people and you start to engage them in conversation, you say, look, I want to, if they start throwing out logical fallacies, you have to point it out and you have to tell them, okay? It's the only way we're going to start a proper conversation. Otherwise, it's going to be continue idiocracy. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Danny, thank you so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check his radio show out, Ragamuffin Radio. Good stuff. I promise you won't be disappointed. I'll catch you all again tomorrow night. The solutions to our problems are an inside job. We're out of here.